Hey, wherever you're listening or watching in the world, it's time for the Sales Hunter podcast. I'm Mark Hunter. Hey, on today's show, we have got Andrea Waltz. Now, Andrea Waltz, where do you know that name? Well, her name appears on thousands and thousands and thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of books because she's co authored the book Go for No. Hey, she's going to be in the studio here in just a second. Let's get the show rolling.
You're listening to the Sales Hunter podcast with Mark Hunter, where the focus is to help you as a sales leader sell with confidence and integrity. And now here's your host.
Well, hey, I said we had Andrea Waltz here. Let me give you a little bit of background on her. Nobody likes to hear no more than Andrea. No, okay, is that weird? No, it's not weird at all. Because I'll tell you what, to hear her speak, to hear her share her ideas for salespeople, how you get past that no. Nobody does it better. So, hey, with that, let's get Andrea on the screen here on the show. Good morning, good afternoon, Andrea. How you doing?
Good morning, Mark, the Sales Hunter. I am so glad to be with you today.
Hey, you know what? I tell you what, your book, Go for No, and you just posted recently about how when you first came out with the book, it struggled and struggled and struggled. And it sounded like you were about ready to give up the ghost on it, right?
Yeah, it wasn't looking very good for a little while there.
And then suddenly you got a break and boom, it all changed.
Yeah,
because of one person.
Because of one person, because one person was, well, two things kind of transpired. He was willing to share some uncomfortable feedback with us, and we were desperate enough and open-minded enough at that point, and not hugely open-minded, but we were desperate enough to say, okay, what do we need to do? And he said, you need to change the cover. Your cover is terrible, you guys. And he was right. So we hired a book designer because we were doing this back in the day before we have all of these amazing graphic design tools, before we all could turn into practically semi-professional designers. We just bootstrapped everything. We did everything, on the cheap. And so we took his advice, and that was a big turning point for us, but we still struggled a few years after that. I mean, it took.
Sure. It wasn't one thing, but you had to stay in the game, because if you had not stayed in the game, you never would have met that individual.
That's true. Yeah.
I mean, that alone is such a powerful lesson, because so many salespeople, we're talking about this whole rejection thing. So many people give up the ghost, give up the chase too soon. And you didn't. You stayed with it. But then even after you got that, it wasn't like suddenly, hey, it's roses and $1 million. No, it was, you still had to keep going, right?
Still had to keep going. Still had to, tell your story as fast as possible, as often as possible to anybody who would listen. That was our mantra. And we did that for years. And I still do that to this day, Mark, which is why I'm here today.
Well, I'll tell you what, when I read that blog post, of course, we've known each other for a few years now, and I knew your story, and I didn't quite know the depth of it. But what a powerful lesson for all of us, because we've all been there. I mean, we have all seen that period where it's like, but you gotta keep going, keep chasing. So what would you say? What's the big message that you want to share with salespeople who are listening?
It's always around this idea of embracing rejection. And so, and this actually, so this particular message that I want to talk about was a little piece in your book, Mind for Sales. And that is that if you can value no, then it changes. When you see the value in it, if you just see it as a stop sign, as a hindrance, as something that you want to avoid, but if you can embrace it and if you can value it, and there's really two pieces to this. One is the literal monetary value that we know a lot of salespeople who will take all of their contacts that they've made and then the yes and divide all of that up divide by the amount of the sale, and every no has an actual dollar value. So it could be $50, it could be $500 for every no they got when they finally got that yes. Divide it up, there's actual monetary value in going through those no's. But the other part too is going for the no, KNOW. Now, this is not, I don't have a book here that I'm pitching, but the know, like, and trust factor, right? That
Yes.
Somebody like Bob Berg talks about so well in The Go-Giver. To get known, oftentimes it starts with a no, right? That's the first, you get that kind of knee-jerk reaction. They put up their hand, no, we're good. We are very happy with our supplier. Please don't call us back. But when you continue to add value and build that relationship and stick with people, I know I've done it for years. For years, my longest prospect attempt was 9 years. And
Wow.
then I recently broke that with 14.
14 years.
14 years. Now, not with the same contact, because
but still, but wow.
Yeah.
That's but what is that? I mean, that says, go back to this whole idea you say about no. And you say, oh, I'm going to embrace the no. So I'm thinking, does that make you a pessimist or an optimist? I don't know. But here's what I love about it, because it makes you the ultimate optimist, because you just keep going. And you just gave out another example, 9 years and 14 years. Why? Because we can bring value to the customer. We know we can help them.
Right.
So we have to stay in the game. We have to stay in the game.
Yeah. If you can help them, and if you believe that it's a right fit and they're qualified and it makes sense, but they're not changing or they're not engaging with you for one reason or another. And eventually I think you can kind of discern some of those reasons, and hopefully you can overcome them. But a lot of times it's just timing, and sometimes it is the decision maker. So if you just hang in there, and then somebody new will come in and say, you know what? Yeah, we're ready to try something different. We were ready to try something new. And that was certainly, true in my case. And I know these companies are right and they're qualified. And so I'm going to be in business. So I'm just going to keep staying engaged and keep staying positive. And to your point about it, I am by my nature an optimistic person.
Yes, you are. You are extremely optimistic. I mean, people say, Mark, you're incredibly optimistic, but I think you're almost more optimistic than I am. Which is,
well, we're taking a negative reality and turning it into a positive. And I will tell you, the thing about no's that I never like to do to people, because I would hate it to be done to me, is to come at salespeople and say, well, don't worry about rejection. It's not that bad. And hang in there, and, don't make a big deal about it. No, it's like, let's acknowledge the elephant in the room. Let's talk about it. If you've got fears coming up, if you've got a past traumatic experience with some customer that yelled at you and slammed the phone in your face, or worse, or threatened to call your boss and have you fired, that experience rings in your mind every time you contact somebody, because you're like, I don't want to cross that line. So we're dealing with emotions, but let's take that negative reality and then let's make it as positive as we possibly can. Let's find the value in it. Let's see how we can outthink it. And Jeb talks a lot about this in his books, about the biology behind rejection, which I love. And we can't get away from the biology. It's hardwired in us to not want to be rejected. So the only tool that we have in our toolbox is we have to fight the biology, fight the gut punch that we get when we lose the big deal, or the butterflies or whatever. We fight the biology and focus on our mind, focus on our thoughts.
Okay, now how do we get that? Because again, it's so easy for us to focus on the negative. In other words, that deal that blew up in our face 5 years ago. For some reason, that's the deal we remember.
Right.
We don't remember the success stories. We don't remember the deals we did close. Why is that? And how do we prevent that?
Yeah, well, I think it's human nature to and self-preservation to focus on what we don't want, and to use those things as kind of guidelines of, don't let that happen. That's what we don't want to happen. So in not wanting that to happen, we unfortunately focus on that and start thinking about that scenario, which is not good, right? Because that's not the kind of energy that you want in your mind. And I always say too, Mark, is, you can go for no, but have yes energy. Like it's not about going in and feeling deflated of, oh, I'm gonna just be down and I'm gonna be depressed because they're going to tell me no. That's what she tells me, is I just should just go for no. No, have that yes energy. Have that, this is going to happen. This is going to be great. They want this. They need this. Be positive. And so that goes, I think, a long way of having that positive mindset, but understanding that there's a difference between expecting a no and accepting it. We have to accept it as part of the process.
Yeah, there's a situation that was shared with me. NASCAR drivers. Okay, they go round and round in circles, and the whole idea is they can never look at the wall. When you look at the wall, you wind up steering yourself into the wall.
Yeah.
And I think this is one of the challenges that we as salespeople do. We always tend to pull back that negative thing into our forefront of our brain, and that's what we focus on. It's one of the reasons why I say in the morning, hey, if you're feeling that way, you got to take a piece of paper and write down the 10 last success stories you've had. You've got to, you have got to focus on the positives. And it's why when you hang out with negative people, you become negative yourself. I mean, wow, how many sales teams do we see that are just negative because boss man, boss lady is negative? Oh, that hurts. That hurts. Yeah. So what would you say would be the 3 key factors that salespeople should be embracing right now? Hey, I'm gonna embrace the no, and I'm gonna run forward.
Yep. Focus on your behavior, and that really is a huge one. And that means focus on the income producing activities that work, and don't worry about the results. It's like if somebody said, hey, I'm going to pay you $25,000 to dig a hole in the ground, and there's other people also that you're competing against, they're also getting $25,000. Whoever digs this hole first wins. What you would do is you would dig as fast as you can, and you wouldn't stop halfway through digging and stand around and start looking at everybody else to see what was going on, because you know that what matters is digging the hole. That's the behavior. But too often when it comes to results, and this is something sales managers are guilty of, we're all guilty of it, it's, well, hang on, let me step back and stare at the hole for a while and see if the numbers about this hole have changed.
Oh.
Right? What are these results? Where are we? And it's like, for salespeople, get micro on your behaviors. Focus on those income producing activities every day, first and foremost. And for us, from a go for no standpoint, it's just getting out there and making the ask. It's sharing your story, making the ask. What do you need? You need appointments. You want meetings. Get out there, start telling your story, doing your research, focusing on those things. And so that's the big one. The second, and so there's kind of 2 parts. It's focusing on your behaviors and not letting the results influence your behavior. So in other words, if you get a couple yeses, don't just take the rest of the day or the week off. That's what we call when we set no goals. Like we'll tell people, set a goal for the number of no's you're going to hear. Try to get 1 no today. If you get a couple yeses, that's great, but try to get that 1 no. It keeps you actually very behavior focused when you are going after that no, as opposed to get the yes and then you can take the rest of the day off.
Right. Good. Okay. Continue. You're sharing some great stuff here.
So that's the first part. So behaviors and results. The second piece really is not to take no personally. And this one is a hard one to wrap your brain around, because I think we've all been taught to, and I think the personality, it would be so fun. And I know there's a lot of studies out there to really analyze the personality of salespeople, but I feel like salespeople are, a lot of times they're show people, and they want and they get value out of not just making the money, but helping people. And they want that little dopamine rush. And so when they're not getting it, they do take it very personally. They do. And so detaching from that and understanding that the more personal that you make it, the more difficult it is to stay in the game, as we talked about at the beginning of the show, and keep going so that the next person who's out there, you can serve them. If you're too busy reeling over the fact that you got to know on this opportunity that you thought was maybe going to be easy, or it was so perfect, that next opportunity is out there and it's waiting for you. But if you're too busy reeling from it, you got to move on quickly.
That's so key, because you got to get in the game. You can't win the game staying on the sidelines. Go back to what you shared way at the beginning when you were struggling. But if you had not kept going, you never would have run into that one individual who did help turn your business around. That is so key. And this other piece that you brought up about the activity, so key, because we look at, like you were using the hole in the ground as the example. Let me just stare at my forecast. Somehow, if I just stare at my forecast, it's going to get better. No, it's not.
Right.
It's the activities that you do. That's what's going to put the numbers into the forecast and allow you to make your number. So, hey, go on to number 3.
All right. So number 3. So we've got the results. We've got to quit taking it personally. And my favorite mantra about taking things personally, by the way, Mark, is that it's not about you, even when it's about you. And that sounds so weird to people, but you have to recognize that there's a funny quote, and I can't remember who said it, but there's everybody loves peaches, right? Except there's somebody who hates peaches. And if you serve peach cobbler to a group of people and everybody loves it, but one person hates it, who's right? Is the person who's eating the peach cobbler who absolutely hates it, are they right? Or the people that love it correct? And so you're always going to have people who don't like you. You're always going to have things that don't go your way, because everybody has their own preferences. They have their own beliefs. It's how they were raised. So get over taking personal. It's even though it's about you, it's just not about you. It's really about the other person. So,
boy, I'll tell you what, it's so much that you shared there, because sales is an emotional game. Let's not kid ourselves. It's emotional. And we get high when we close the sale, but boy, when somebody rejects us, we do tend to take that personally. And, a good friend of ours, Mike Weinberg, has always shared, have you ever seen the internet or seen a newspaper where a salesperson has lost an arm or a leg or been shot or something because of a sales call? No, it's never happened. It's never happened. So, I mean, no blood is going to be spilled. No children are going to be harmed. It's just a rejection. And the example I love to use is also, when I hear a rejection, when I get an objection, I don't know what else is going on in that person's life. I kind of view it as I'm traveling through an intersection. I got a green light. I'm cruising through, and a car runs the red light and T-bones me. Now, I'm totally right, but I just got in an accident, because I have no idea where that person's coming from. It just happens, but we move on from that. But wow, that can be hard for so many salespeople. And let's not kid ourselves. Rejection is the number one reason why people leave the profession.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And that is why there are a couple things. I mean, people ask all the time, how do we fix that? And, a big part of it is, unfortunately, experience, time and experience. You do eventually learn to numb yourself to know when you do it enough. I mean, there's just no way around there. You can't put a price and a value on experience. And this is what I think makes sales so fun, and why sales is, I'm sure you would agree, it's art and it's science, and they're so intertwined. And people always want the black and white answer. Like, how exactly do you handle this? What would you say in this exact scenario? And we know that it always depends. It's like, well, here's what I would do in this scenario, but it depends on the client. What's your relationship, and how long has this been going, and what are all of these other factors? That is all the art that we bring. So the experience of doing it over and over, and reprogramming your mindset to really embrace and find the value in rejection. That's what it is. Can it be done? Yes. I have seen so many people do it, but the first thing is you can't come into sales with the mindset of, well, I'll sell, but I hate rejection, and that's never going to change.
Yeah, it's so interesting what you and I've shared this example before. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Tommy Boy.
Yeah.
You've seen the movie Tommy Boy?
Long
There's
time ago.
there's that scene in there where they're
Scene.
sitting in the diner, and Tommy's trying to get chicken wings, and he ultimately convinces the wait staff person to get him chicken wings. And David Spade is saying, that was great job of selling. He said, well, I knew I didn't have to be successful because we still had a meat lover's pizza in the trunk of the car. And there's just something, right? I mean, there's just something about that.
Yes.
Because it's like, okay, if I do get rejected, I still got something else, which comes back to something I always talk about. It's amazing how you can take rejection better when you got a full pipeline.
That was literally just switched into my mind. Absolutely. That is huge. And by the way, I have made the mistake more than once of letting my pipeline, because I was so busy in delivering of services, that deliver, and thinking, oh, the pipeline will fill up on its own, and then turn around and go like, wow, the pipeline's empty. One time I actually lost my pipeline was so bad, but I had this deal. So I'm like, well, let me just close this, feel better about things. Thought I had closed it, didn't get a signed contract. It canceled later that day, same day. And now I was like freaking out. So you want to talk about desperation. And I learned my lesson that day. I thought, if I'm like practically out of business, because I was focused so much on delivery of service and account management, and kind of thinking that things would roll in without my involvement. And sometimes they don't. Things are streaky. So you've got to have a full pipeline.
You got to exercise that sales muscle every day.
Yes.
Every day. Hey, wow, we are running out of time here, but hey, well, I do hope you stick around for the after the show. People want to get in touch with you. What's the best way to do that?
I am well branded, Mark, as are you. So go for no. You type in go for no, you will find me.
I love that. Go for no. Wow. How negative can that be? And then you get to the positive, optimistic.
That's right.
I love it. Hey, so we went, anyway, let's just cut to the other video, and we'll come right back and we'll do the after the show. Okay. Sound
Awesome.
Good?
Yes.
You've been listening to the Sales Hunter podcast. I'm Mark Hunter. And hey, I do want you to check out the Sales Hunter University. How do you find it? Go to the website, thesaleshunter.com. You'll see it right there. Now, back to the show. Hey, great catching up with you. So what have you and Richard been up to?
Well, it's summer, so and we're in Florida, so we're hunkered down in the air conditioning, and I have started gardening. I bought this big thing called a veggie pod, which is on my patio. It's on a trolley. It can roll around, so it's like waist high, so I don't have to. I'm not bending over in the dirt, but it's really cool. I have little tiny sprouts. And so I'm going for yes on my veggie pod. I'm trying desperately not to kill these plants.
It sounds like you haven't had success in the past.
That is correct. Yes.
Oh, wow. No, it's cool. I mean, we all have to find some outlet for what we do. Have you and Richard been on the road much lately, or what?
No, and we haven't. We've been doing a lot of virtual work. We also this year had 3 book projects fall into our lap of helping other people write and publish, because we've had so much experience writing and publishing our own books. That is something that we've it's our side hustle.
Hey,
so we're working on 3 books. And that is taking up all of our time working on juggling 3 books simultaneously. So that and gardening, but you can't go out to the veggie pot, I've noticed, and stare and
It doesn't work. Yeah. It
Yes.
doesn't work. Yeah.
If you stare at that parsley and that cucumber and the carrots, they are not going to grow any faster.
Yeah, they're going to look back up at you and say, "Hey, forget you. We're going to wilt right here in the Florida sun." So anyway, hey, we've been talking with Andrea Waltz. Go for No, and I'll tell you what: if you haven't read the book, you got to read the book. And Andrea, you crank out some great content on LinkedIn and other places. Thank you for doing that. You really do help a tremendous number of people. So your website, one more time.
Yep. goforno.com.
goforno.com. Hey, with that, we got to sign off. I'm Mark Hunter, the Sales Hunter. This has been another episode of the Sales Hunter podcast. If you like the podcast, hey, subscribe to it. And hey, leave a review, because it's how we get to tell other people when you take the time to leave a review. I'm Mark Hunter. We'll see you on the next episode.